This is Heard Between the Ears, a podcast about candid conversations and human contradictions. We're your hosts, Kendra and Anna.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Her Between the Ears. I'm Kendra.
And I'm Anna.
We're so excited to talk to you today. Our topic of conversation is about the idea of independence, like having your own independence versus relying on community or just relying on other people. And so for me, I kind of want to start with me because I find myself being on the more independent side. Like I have trouble sometimes, a lot of times, a lot of times of relying on people or asking for help or, depending on the community that I surround myself with. And so I really wanted to talk about this conversation because there is a balance that needs to be struck between like having your own independence versus relying on someone. And so, Anna, I have a question for you. Where do you find yourself on that scale?
Right off the bat, she wants to know how I'm feeling about things. I probably am. I feel like I always answer with it's a situational thing. I
mean, sometimes
literally the contradiction. I am the
You are.
sandwich. I
You
am
are.
always like, well, I live between two places. I think in my mind, I think I'm a lot more independent in my mind, but I
Mhm.
think maybe in reality, or maybe it's vice versa. In my mind, I rely on community more. I think that's probably more so. In my mind, I
Mhm.
rely more so on community, but I would think that people, like if you were to ask my friends, they would say, no, you're independent. And I think definitely like I can see where this also like depending on the stage of life that you're in, that's another thing I would like 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago even, I would say I was like not very independent. Like I just kind of like
Mhm.
to be, like they like the analogy of like a kids on a soccer team and they all swarm the ball. I feel
Mhm.
like that was like I'd be like a little pack in my little pack and be like, what's what's everybody doing? Yeah, like growing up, I would say I was definitely more of like a follower. Now in this stage of my life, I am would I identify as more so independent, and having to make my own decisions. But
Yeah,
also in this stage of my life, it's me that I'm responsible for.
right.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about that, I was just like, I also feel like I'm independent because of the family dynamics. Like I was a middle child, so it was very easy for me to try to have to figure things out because like I wasn't the problem child at the moment. At any given moment, I was never the problem child unless I made myself the problem child. So it was easy to get lost in the sauce. So, which is why I feel like I've always leaned toward this independence,
Hmm.
because I had to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I was the baby, but the gap between my brothers and myself is 7 and 9 years. Whenever I would like come home from school, it would be like I was watching myself or like
Hmm.
out in the neighborhood playing with friends. Like
Hmm.
that's just how things rolled. And,
Hmm.
it wasn't, I more or less like I've always been able to find a way to keep myself busy. Not only for me is it like, what stage of life am I in? What stage of life am I in? What is the
Hmm.
situation? But also like, do I want to keep myself busy or do I want to just kind of like zone out and like do whatever
Right.
everybody else is doing? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think as I've gotten older, I realized that independence, too much independence, hyper independence is not great because like
Yeah.
we're not meant to live this life alone. We're meant to live it in community. And so trying to strike that balance of like not being hyper independent or and also trying to figure out like I don't want to be too reliant on other people is like the struggle that I'm
Mm.
constantly constantly living in.
Right. Right. Yeah. I know. I guess like, what would you, if you had to define independence, like, what does that look like to you?
I mean, I think for me, my definition of independence, honestly, that I realized a couple of years when I started therapy is literally the definition of hyper independence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've
It's
been
like, whoa.
diagnosed with hyper independence disorder.
But basically, independence to me is just like at the core of it is like not needing other people,
Right.
not wanting to
Yeah.
depend on other people, not needing other people, and just being able to do the things that I need to do. And that is not realistic because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to do everything. I don't know everything. And it's not realistic. And I think for me, every time I can like point instance after after instance where I either delegated something to someone or asked for help and I was let down. And so I
Yeah.
think that's where that like hyper independence come in and it's just like, well, I'm just gonna figure out how to do this. I may not know how to do it, but
Right.
I'm gonna figure it out and
Right.
I'm gonna keep it moving because I don't
Yeah.
need you to slow me down.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like we kind of like always have these types of conversations around like society as well. And so
Hmm.
I feel like in today's age, this idea of independence is also in tune with empowerment.
Hmm.
And I personally feel like there are two different definitions there. Like something like someone who is independent versus somebody who is empowered, because I feel like a person who is empowered can ride the line of relying on community or delegating or having awareness and realizing this is what I need at this stage in my life. And that feels like, I guess, more of a positive spin on independence, where maybe there's this like pseudo negative connotation with
Hmm.
solo, blinders on, laser focus, like
Hmm.
self-serving.
Hmm.
Um, so it's more inward versus outward.
You raised a great point, and I want to define. I'm being my therapist right now. I want to define those two words.
Okay.
So I
Wait,
just
did you
found
already like look this up?
no, no, no. As
Just
you were
now.
talking, I
Okay.
just looked it up.
Yeah.
So empowerment means authority or power given to someone to do something,
Mm.
or the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. And then independence, hold on. Independence is the fact or state of being independent. All right. Thanks. Let me
Thanks a
look at
lot,
independent. All
Merriam
right.
Webster.
Independent is free from outside control, not depending on another's authority. A lot of these other definitions are political, so I'm going to skip them. Or capable of thinking or acting for oneself, not depending on another for livelihood or subsistence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. I think now we have empowerment is overused. I want to be empowered to do X
Yeah.
or whatever. And I think when it comes to independence versus empowerment, like empowerment requires someone to feel or be given the control
Mm.
to do the
Mm-hmm.
things that they need to do versus independence is just like I have my own control and I'm going to do what I need to do to defend myself, to provide for myself, to um, do whatever I need to make it through this life. And I think for me, I don't know that I'm not empowered. I feel like I am empowered to do the things that I need to do, but I think sometimes that empowerment comes with over being too controlling
Yeah, for sure.
because I want to do the things when I want, how I want right
Right.
now
Yeah.
versus waiting on somebody else to do it who may be more have more experience, have more education about whatever it is, and could probably do it better than me. But
Mm-hmm.
like that, that idea of releasing my control or relying on somebody else sometimes can like really be like, I don't, debilitating for me.
Okay, so I have a question. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of when it comes to relying on somebody else?
Not having for them to be disappointed. I've been disappointed so many times in my life about when I like trust people with things or ask them to do something for me and I have been let down. So that for me is my biggest fear.
Yeah. It's
Especially like,
interesting.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm gonna let you go. Finish your thought.
Okay. I was just especially like when it's something that's like a big thing or like something like I am doing this for somebody else. Like
Yeah.
I was tasked with this item and I can't figure out how to do it. And so I'm asking for your help, but then like that help either never comes or it's like delivered poorly.
Yeah. I mean, not to therapize you, but
Oh, trust me, I've talked to death about this.
I feel like so something that generally like helps me in situations is like what I asked you, like what's the worst thing that could happen? This person has let me down and it's made me feel really terrible, question myself, like I don't want to rely on other people again. And the fact that it's happened multiple times over probably gives you this perception of if I'm not independent and if I don't take care of myself, then I'm gonna be let down regardless. Because if this is a science experiment, I've tested this theory and the outcome is always somebody's letting me down. Or maybe not always, but like more times than not, somebody is
Mhm.
always letting me down. Um, and for me, in my like little question about like worst case scenario, if I can wrap my head around, well, worst case scenario, somebody's gonna let me down, and then I'm gonna be the one who's gonna have to figure this out on my own. But in the same like process of thought, if I was able to bring myself out of that situation before, I can do it again. And so that
Mhm.
makes me feel buzzword empowered to be like,
Mhm.
you know what? I have the ability to get through this situation or survey the lay of the land. Who else can I ask for an opinion for help for? Like, who can I reach out to make this situation better so that in the future, like, I get the outcome that I want the first time around versus being, let down
Mhm.
by whomever. Did you cut those people out of your life? Like,
I
are they
mean, I
still
guess
in
it
your
depends.
community?
It
Yeah.
depends. I mean, it depends on like how bad it was. Like if it was
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
like I can't do this anymore.
We're moving on. Yeah.
We're moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think another thing that my therapist always tells me is my this idea of me, having such high standards for others people because I have such high standards for
Standards.
myself.
Yeah.
Um, and the lack of not having trust for other people
Uh-huh.
and recognizing that, we're all human.
Yeah.
We all will let someone down, whether or not we did it on purpose
Mm-hmm.
or it was out of our control. And so, like, recognizing that and moving in that space of like, okay, instead of going into any situation that I have to ask for help, instead of going in with that mindset of like, this person gonna let me down, so let me be doing something on the back end to make sure that I
Mm-hmm.
know how to do this. So
Yeah.
just because they do let me down, I know how to like pick it up and keep moving. Instead
Yeah.
of going in it with that mindset, like thinking about like, being open to like this person, I'm asking this person because I trust this person and I am going to have the best intentions for them. I'm going to assume the best intentions of them so
Mm-hmm.
that um so that I can be surprised. I can like they can like live up to that, well, not standard, but like if I'm being an optimist about the situation, then 9 times out of 10, it works out the way that it's supposed to, versus
Yeah.
going in assuming or already thinking about the bad that's going to happen, and then the bad happens, and then it's like, well, see, I'm just proving myself right. So yeah.
Right. I feel like I'm generally a very trusting person for whatever reason. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like I mostly trust people. Am I skeptical sometimes? Yes. But generally, I am of the mindset where I am not the smartest person in the room. There's got to be somebody else who has a better way of thinking, knows
Mhm.
whatever the subject matter is more than me. And so I feel like I'm pretty good about relying on others. I think when we were talking about, and just now even like asking for help or looking outside of ourselves to like have somebody else show up for you, I'm probably worse at that,
Mhm.
maybe. Yeah.
Mm.
So like I definitely share your thoughts and opinions on that. But like I've had people let me down in the past, but I don't think that I've had somebody let me down to the point where I'm like not willing to ask for help and not trusting people.
I've gotten better.
Yeah.
I have definitely got better, and it's something that, again, I'm bringing all my therapy sessions to the forefront, is relying on others requires vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is very hard for me because when I have the times that I have been vulnerable with other people, it has not gone well.
Mhm.
And so now, when I say that me asking for help and relying on others has gotten better, it really has, because I've
Yeah.
learned to be vulnerable. I've learned how to be vulnerable in the last
Mm,
3 years, and that's
mm.
only because of therapy, which
Yeah.
is great because what I'm learning with vulnerability is when you are vulnerable about something, it empowers, but it also encourages the other person that you're being vulnerable with to connect with you on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And so in the last 3 years, when I have been vulnerable um, with the people in my circle, it has turned out good, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm having the opposite effect.
Mhm.
Honestly, before therapy, I had a lot of bad experience with being vulnerable, which is why
Mhm.
it was very hard for me to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
But with therapy, I learned that I was probably being vulnerable with the people that I shouldn't have been trusting
Right.
in the first place, which is why it backfired. But like being vulnerable with the people that I trust and care about and are able to share or carry some of the things that I carry
Mhm.
has just shown me that I can be myself, but
Yeah.
also like I'm being known, because we all want to be known by others. And so being known and being accepted for who I am, and not like, pushing people away because I don't trust them, has changed my life for the better. So I am
Yeah.
getting better with relying on people, but
Mm.
it's not where it could be. But it's
Right.
not where it was.
Right. Yeah. I know. Isn't that the truth? Like literally, I
Mhm.
mean, like I was just thinking here as well, like growing up and being a kid, you
Mhm.
know, you are innately vulnerable and trusting until something happens where somebody lets you down, or something happens where you don't trust that person anymore. Like it's a learned behavior. But I
Mhm.
feel like when you're born, it's like you're this blank canvas of like rainbows and good and sunshine generally until like adulting happens and you're just like doom and gloom or
Right.
lightning bolts or situational
Right.
stuff comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but like when we come into this world, we are vulnerable. Like
Mm,
they have to put their trust in their parents because like they can't take care of themselves. And it's like,
right.
how do we go from that to like me now, like relearning how to be vulnerable?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that like you could put it on a scale almost too, where it's like when you're first learning vulnerability, maybe it's something small that happens where it's, just this little like, it's like chipping away at the vulnerability, ice cube or whatever you want to call it. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, like you're left with not like the inability to be vulnerable because all of these like little things have kind of
Mhm.
added up and chipped away.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Vulnerability sucks, but it's important. It's important when it comes to relying on other people or just,
sure.
being a human because we can't really do this life without community, and that's the contradiction because
Right.
I really love, like, at the end of the day, most people would rather do things themselves,
Yeah, I agree.
but
Mhm.
it's the contradiction of, well, you can't do everything yourself, so you have to figure out who you can trust and who's in your community so you can rely on others.
Mhm. Yeah.
So now that we've talked about independence and relying on our community, I think it's time for questions.
Time for questions. My question for you today is what was the last thing that you asked for help on?
That is a really that's a really good question.
Hey, thanks.
That is a really good question because now I'm thinking about it, and I would say, because I'm trying to remember, like, I feel like my brain has just been, I've been so siloed, and so I can't really think of anything right now, but I definitely did. So I'm working on this big report for work, and it's coming out in June. And so I think I definitely did ask for help because I could do it by myself.
Yeah.
So, like, my friend Jasmine and I work together, and I think we have a really great we have a great friendship, but also like a really great working relationship. And I find myself constantly asking her for help, asking her for feedback in a way that I don't think I would necessarily have done before.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I can't give you a specific thing because I feel like it's just been a constant flow of, if something pops up that well, actually, this is an example that I could use. So for example, like, if something came up where I didn't know how to handle this or respond to the other person with, and so I called her and asked for help of how to handle the situation. And that's something that I
Mhm.
would have never done before. And so the fact that I feel vulnerable enough, comfortable enough with myself to ask for help in that way is just like it's a step in the right direction. I'm very
I was
proud of
just
myself.
gonna like this entire time that you've been talking, I'm sitting here smirking because I'm just like this is you. I would because like immediately you were like, I saw the independence like light bulb flicker. Like it was like, I'm so independent. And then it was like, well, all right, let me give you this. Like the people who are in my inner circle who I do trust, I am willing to be vulnerable with them. This is my learned
Mhm,
behavior of
mhm,
I am comfortable reaching out to these people because they won't let me down, or if they deliver information that is like emotionally charged or negative or can impact me in a way where if I take it the wrong way, they have the ability to like either rein me in or like I trust
mhm.
them enough to know that it's coming from a good place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
I
am
saw
very proud of
all of
myself.
that
The
happen.
whole path, the whole journey.
Yes, I sure did.
What about
Mhm.
you?
Um I mean, I can think of 2 examples in the last week. So,
That's great.
yeah. I recently had a friend move from she's in the process of moving from Cincinnati to Denver, as soon as I found out that she was like leaving with a truck, I was like, oh my gosh, do you think that you can put some of my stuff on your truck if I can get it to you? So not only did I have to ask her if it was okay for me to do that, but I had to ask my oldest brother if he would basically, like, I gave him less than 24 hours notice. I was like, can you do this for me, please? Like, go get the stuff from mom and dad, because I've got, you know, things in their basement, I've got things in his basement, and like wake up at the ungodly hour with your, you know, 4-year-old little girl and like make this happen for me. So like personally, I did that this week, but I mean, also with work, like I feel like I'm asking for help all the time because I think I've shared before, I've got a new job, and so I'm just like, I don't want to say that I'm floundering. I'm not necessarily floundering, but at the same time, I'm just like, I know enough to be dangerous. Like, you guys are all trusting me with this stuff. Am I doing it right? Let's assume so. If I'm not doing it right, then, you know, I need to touch base and check in with you, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So 2 instances where I feel like I'm just putting myself out there in a space where it's like, I could potentially, with my brother, I could have potentially, he could have been really irritated with me and been like, no, this is a deep inconvenience for me. You know,
Right.
no, I'm not going to do it. But my big brother is amazing. And my friend, Amanda, is also amazing for letting me take advantage of their situation.
Well, it worked out for you.
It did. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, my question is, in this stage of your life, do you find yourself needing more independence or needing more community?
I immediately went to both places.
Of course.
I like really am. And I've got one foot in either, but I'll tell you my rationale and my thinking. So,
Okay.
in moving out here, I have had to become financially more independent. I've had to become more emotionally independent, and I've had to become more professionally like independent. So I've got a lot of these, like, just by way of like what's going on in my life right now, and socially independent. Like, I need to be okay with being alone, having enough income to pay for my lifestyle, um, and just like putting myself out there in a way where it's like I have to look out for myself. But also the flip of that is I'm putting myself in situations where it's like I'm very uncomfortable asking for help. Will you be my friend? Or like, can I inconvenience you to help me move some giant box into my apartment? Or, hey, work people, like, I don't know exactly what I'm doing. I kind of know what I'm doing. And so I think it's just like right now I'm like almost 50-50
Smack dab in the middle.
divided. Yeah. This is where I am in my life. I have to be both.
It's
What about
good.
you?
I mean, I think for me, I'm more on relying on community. And I think it's that way just because I feel like the community that I have built, I feel like I'm very proud of the
Mhm.
community that I've built. Like, this is the first time in my life I feel like I can really depend on the people that are in my community, whether
Mhm.
that's me just like being vulnerable with them or just, whatever that community, whatever I need and how I can show up for them or they show up for me has
Mhm.
been something that I don't think I've ever experienced before. Not really. And so because of that, I feel like because I trust my community more, I'm able to rely on them more. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I think in this stage of my life, I'm still that independent woman, but I am still very much um stepping into this new territory of being reliant on my community in a way that I don't think I have before.
Yeah.
So,
But I think it also just goes to show as well that there can be an evolution, the stage of your life where, you know, when you're in your early 20s and maybe you are either A, you're more independent, or B, you're more relying on your community, or like okay with vulnerability and asking for help. Yeah, I know.
but I also think it just shows that we are, as humans, we evolve, we change. I know we talked about we talked about in a previous episode about how change can be scary and how we don't like when things change, but
Yeah.
it's very clear that we evolve, whether that's being more reliant as you get older on your community or more independent, depending on like where you were on the scale
Mm-hmm.
when you were younger. I think it just, we're all walking contradictions at the end of the day.
Contradictions, evolution, all of it. Self-awareness, vulnerability. I know. It's so true though. I'm with you. I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you for
great.
listening.
We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe, drop a comment, leave a review, and connect with us on social media at Heard Between. And we hope you keep coming back for more. Until next time.